is Tim. This is my good friend and training partner, Chris Ormby. And we're here to talk to you real quick about Kata mindset tip number 2, form versus function. A lot of times, brand new students, they get kind of lost in what the kata is, what the movements are. So they'll have form, but they won't necessarily understand what the function of the movements are versus the form. So what do I mean by that? I mean, kata is a series of moves that are put together for a form, right? And if you think of kata like each individual move is a snapshot, okay? And it goes from one snapshot, one move to the next move. And those movements might not have anything to do with each other, or they may, right? Depending on the kata, depending on your level of understanding. So, as an example, Naihanchi show, okay? Depending on what style that you train in, Shotokan does Naihanchi show like this. They start out this way. Shorin, our system, starts the kata this way. Okay, so same kata, but a couple different applications, a couple different looks. So form, okay, versus function. So when you're thinking of the kata, when you're thinking of the function, your opponent, right, is facing you, okay, in this particular movement, okay? So we can look at it a couple ways. One being a wrist grab, okay? So the kata turns sideways, okay? Now here's the wrist grab escape, right? You rotate your wrist, it comes out, and then there's your strike, right? Or if you look at the very beginning of the kata this way, okay, and then you step out and you do the move. So he could be grabbing your wrist again, right? Again, this is very basic understanding, okay? So I turn sideways to get out of this line, okay, and I'm in the kata stance, right? And I use the technique to break the grip, grab his hand, maybe I pull him into the technique, or he pulls away, pulling me into the strike, okay? So it looks like this, right? And then we all know the next move, okay? So that's one example, form versus function. If you're looking at it from more of a Shotokan type style where they step out this way, okay? This could be a block, right? Absolutely. Or it could be an escape from a bear hug. So if Chris bear hugs me, right? I'm going to do the kata, the application, or the bunkai, okay? It's going to look a little different. So I maneuver myself, step behind your partner. Now here's the kata. Palm up, energy goes into the fingertips. And I get behind him as this arm throws the opponent to the mat, okay? So we have form, right? And we have function again. So step behind. Now you'll have to kind of work with this movement. Sometimes you may have to shuffle a little bit more behind, like this. He's already off balance. Now the kata, if you're going palm up, the energy is in the fingers, okay? You can't be limp wristed here. It won't have the same effect. Palm up, and I use that energy to throw the attack, okay? So you've got two different forms, two different possible functions, okay? Or bunkai, right? The Shorin version, boom, okay? You've got the Shotokan version, okay? So I'm not saying that that's what the movement is. I'm just saying that that's one theory or one idea, okay? Form versus the fighting capability of the movement, okay? Let's think of another one. What about Pinan Sandan, okay? We got these series of movements, right? Depending on what system, what style you do. I started in Shito and we would step in this way, right? Shorin that I study now, we do it this way. Okay, same kata, same movements. Shorin adds a little kick there where Shito didn't. So form versus function, right? The application, the bunkai will not always fit the form, okay, or the technique. So let's look at a couple applications. So one, Sensei Chris, again, let's keep it simple, grabs the wrist. I'm just going to execute a wrist grab escape using that elbow strike, okay? So maybe he pulls me in and I step, okay? Or maybe he doesn't pull, I step back, extending his arm, and now I break the hold, okay? So just because a kata steps forward doesn't mean the application has to step forward, okay? Depending on what you're thinking, right? So if we're thinking Naihanchi, Nidan, okay? So we're doing this, right? Kind of the same application, right? He grabs me, I grab him back, so he can't let go, okay? And now I pull him in, and there's a lot of pressure on that wrist, and I could break his wrist if I really put a lot of energy into this technique, okay? So again, break the hold, hanging on, break the hold, okay? Right? So again, we have form, the way you do the kata, and you have function, or the fighting movement, the fighting capability of that particular move, okay? Another example, Chinto Kata in our Shorin system starts out like this, okay? Different styles may start the kata a different way, but this is one application that I like to think of. Again, rear bear hug escape. I don't let him get settled into this. If he gets settled and I give him a chance to lock in, then that's a different technique, okay? Maybe a growing strike, right? But if I could catch it early and I catch his hands reaching, then I use that, okay? Now the kata goes up, and I slip out into this nasty little wrist lock, okay? So again, kata, right? So catch it early, okay? Grabbing the hand. Now this motion is more of a, I'm lifting his arm and I'm dropping my body at the same time, going under the arm. Okay, and careful with your partners if you practice this, into this real nasty wrist lock. Okay, very, very good wrist lock. All right, so again, form and the function looks different. Okay, so the way that I like to think of it is in the old days when the masters were training and nobody had really dojos, they just trained outside, right? They trained at night, a lot of secrecy, right? So you have the kata for show, right? Or you had kata for fighting, okay? There's a lot of those fighting applications that are really hidden in the kata, so that when they would practice their kata and other people could maybe walk by and watch what they were doing, they would see them performing the kata, but the meaning of the movements were really hidden, okay? So I think that part is what was passed on, okay? Funakashi took karate to Japan when all the American GIs started coming to Okinawa after the war, during the war, after the war. They learned kata, but not necessarily the meaning of the kata. So when the GIs came back to the US, they brought all this kata with them, but not necessarily understanding what all the meanings of the movements were. Remember, in Okinawa in those days, students had to really prove themselves. They stayed with one master, one teacher for almost an entire lifetime, okay, until that teacher could really trust that student with the real hidden meanings, okay? So when I think of kata, or when I learn a new kata, what I like to do is I like to look at other styles and see how they do their kata. What are the subtle differences, okay? Because every style is a piece of the puzzle, right? Shotokan does it this way. That's a piece of the puzzle. Shorin does it this way. That's a little piece of the puzzle. Goju does it this way. That's a little piece of the puzzle. So if you're trying to figure out what the function or the bunkai is of a certain kata, take a look at what other styles are doing, how they're performing their kata. What does that movement look like in Shito-ryu? What does that movement look like in Shotokan, in Shorin-ryu? And that will kind of help, it helped me shed light on what the meaning might be, right? And then it's okay, trial and error, right? Get a partner and figure it out, right? Trial and error. Because I promise you, the fighting application and the kata form probably will look nothing alike, okay? So again, these are probably the two best examples. Naihanchi, again, first move, right? Okay, first move is here. Okay, he's grabbed your wrist, right? I'm assuming the position, re-grabbing his wrist. Okay, now what he does from here determines if I step or if I step back, right? If I'm here and he pulls away, he's pulling you into the technique. Okay, if he doesn't, I step and pull him into the technique. Okay, just because the kata steps doesn't necessarily mean the application or the function has to follow that pattern. Okay, and again, Shotokan, right? I learned this one a long time ago from our Sensei Day. So rear bear hug again, the Shotokan version, right? Steps, step deep, right? And now the hand goes palm up, and the energy is in the hand, right? As you do the kata. Okay. Sensei Chris, anything to add?
No, I think it's about it.
Form versus function, okay? If you're a new student to karate, no matter what style or system, kata can be very confusing, right? It's one of the most treasure things about karate, but at the same time, it's one of the most difficult things, right? Trying to figure out what the movements are, okay? When you're doing these kata, remember kata is a link to the past. The same kata that we're doing is the same kata that the old masters did 100 years ago. So I think that's really cool. My name is Tim, this is Chris. This is your kata mindset tip number 2. Go train.